And I'll just explain what he said. The younger child said he's not sure why he was there, but he was in a kind of auditorium. There were kids his age and younger. Some had pajamas on and some didn't. He said the woman's English was not clear. There was a craft that came on top of the building, and he actually, his brother corroborated that they both saw this craft. He said they had 5 fingers that didn't bend and had no joints or thumbs. They had no ears, no eyebrows, the nose was slits, no fingernails, and no expression. Very detailed for a dream, if it was one, isn't it? And the interesting thing was that the brother said they were like scientists, and notice again the object that this one is holding. And he said that he felt these beings were scientists and they were curious about us. And he was told that it was something to do with genetics. What 13-year-old knows anything about genetics? And he said the stick was used as a tranquilizer. They both remembered a light in their bedroom. They recall leaving together. The younger brother was crying and said, "If I have to go on the spaceship, I'm bringing my teddy." And the older brother helped him find it, as he knew they didn't have much time. Very profound when you've got 2 children corroborating each other's story, and the distinct detail of that gives it a very powerful resonance. Many star children now, I believe, are in their 20s and 30s, etc. I've just taken some of the things that this gentleman said he could do when he was younger. He said, "I could take hard-boiled eggs from boiling water with my bare hands without being burnt." And I've met many experiencers say the same thing, including one that was in her 60s who came to me and said that I could do that as a child myself. I could turn out street lights with my mind. I would have telepathic conversations with my sister until she told me to stop being lazy and start talking. Fascinating, isn't it? And again he said, I could open flower buds with my mind. There are many other things that he told me that he could do. And one young man in his late 20s said to me that when he was 4, he could levitate his little cars up into the air. But interestingly, he could only do it when he was on his own. When his friends came, he couldn't do it, and he didn't know why. But he stopped doing it when he went to school, because a lot of these children shut down, because they realised that it's not normal, and other people will laugh at them or not believe them. And what Tracy Taylor has been told is that the DNA of the star kid has 10-fold the amount of information. And this goes into knowledge bombs that this 8-year-old called them, that are downloaded into her head. And she said, it sometimes makes my head hurt. And I'm going to talk now about some of the ways that these children are assisted in terms of their evolution and their understanding of the craft. Remember, we've talked about this manifesting all around the world, from China right through to Mexico. They are seen in all the countries, and often the parents are quite bewildered. But many of the children do shut down. So how do they communicate? On the craft, my clients experience always it being telepathic. They almost feel like they have go into a superconscious state. As one gentleman in his regression said, when I went up to the craft, he said it wasn't verbal, it felt like noise in my head, but then I realised I had to use my mind a bit like a radio receiver and tune myself into the frequency. Then I could hear identically what they were saying. So it's really interesting. It appears that we can do this, and we do it on the craft, but somehow many of them are dumbed down as they come back to planet Earth. But what is fascinating is that what they say about other ways they're being taught. It should be borne in mind that the nature of extraterrestrial communication, that in a majority of instances, star visitors communicate with humans by telepathic transfer of mental images and concepts, rather than by words and speech. So let's go into how that happens. This is an image I would just like to show you of, and I don't know how well you can see it, but there's actually a face on the side of this man's body. And it's a face that looks a bit like a lion. We've tried to see whether or not it fits the lion people, or whether or not, the other one that you're seeing is actually considered a demon from sort of ancient times called Asmodeus. But we're not sure even whether it might be a reptilian being. But the way that people are communicated with seems to be sometimes with the marks on their body. Some have had symbols, and some have had actually letters of the alphabet. And we've tried to understand why that is. And in regression recently, one lady told me that sometimes the marks are from the procedures done on the craft, but some are also to tell the beings what procedures need to be done. But also some of this is a communication saying, well, have you got it yet? Have you got that we come and get you, and that you're not alone, and that you're part of us? Almost like a trigger for waking them up. These were actually on the fingertips of an artist that I'm going to show you a small video clip of. This gentleman finally discovered that he was having experiences. He used to be terrified of clowns, he used to be terrified of Santa Claus. He said when he saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind, it traumatized him. We actually had a 7-hour conversation because he happened to be in New Zealand at the time and I was in Australia. What was absolutely fascinating to both of us was the next day he rang me and said, look Mary, this isn't going to be a 7-hour conversation again. I've just rung the telephone company wanting to know what my telephone bill is going to be after 7 hours conversation with you. And the interesting fact was that the telephone company had no record of our telephone call. We often get some really strange things happening with this, which I can't explain, but find quite fascinating. Here's another one, the letter L on his wrist, this gentleman. Sometimes they'll see strange symbols, like this one. 3 people living in the same valley in the Lake District in England all saw this symbol on the same night and came to the conclusion they'd all been on the spaceship, even though they lived in different locations. Now, this is a story that's told in Expressions of ET Contact. I'm now going to show you the video of this gentleman who is an artist. And what he told me was that they are now using his artistic ability to actually draw some of these intelligences. And he said it's like a client on his shoulder saying, get it right. So he actually feels under pressure to draw them accurately. And this is a little bit of his story.